Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler. It is October 24th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. So for this segment, what I am going to do is talk about some trends as it relates to global carbon emissions and in particular how this relates to the energy sector. But I'm also going to transition into some recent news with regards to Tesla, which at this point is definitely the corporate clean energy tip of the spear, providing us with an example of where we need to go as a global society on a corporate basis to deal with human-caused climate change. Of course, we're going to need multiple actions if we're going to have much hope of preventing global atmospheric temperature increases above 1.5 degrees Celsius above 19th century averages to 2 degrees Celsius above 19th century averages, both of which are far more difficult temperature ranges than what we're experiencing now, but are far less difficult than what happens if you continue to burn fossil fuels and continue to emit carbon into the Earth's atmosphere. So I just want to call your attention to this statement by Faith Birol at the International Energy Agency. And according to him, we are expected to see energy-related carbon dioxide emissions increasing again in 2018 after growing in 2017. It's worth noting that the pace of growth over the past 2 years is not as great as we have seen during recent years, as both wind and solar energy become more popular globally, despite political opposition from political interests associated with fossil fuel industry, but also as electrification of vehicle transportation moves forward and as efficiency has tended to increase despite opposition from a number of harmful political players. What I will say is that we did have an opportunity to peak global carbon emissions in the present time frame, and one of the reasons why we are not presently peaking global carbon emissions at this time is because we are not aggressively enough pursuing a transition to clean energy. That option is still open to us because clean energy technology just keeps getting stronger and stronger, both on an economic basis and on a performance basis. I'd also like to talk about what we've got to do to peak global carbon dioxide emissions from the energy sector, which is now edging up toward around 33 billion tons of carbon dioxide every year. And in order to do that, we've got to hit global carbon emissions on a number of levels. We've got to expand both wind and solar energy such that it outcompetes not only new growth in natural gas and coal, but forces the shutdown of old natural gas and coal power plants. In addition, we've got to work on electrifying transportation as rapidly as possible in order to start reducing both oil consumption and oil-based carbon emissions. On top of that, so at present, wind and solar are both able to handily outcompete coal. However, natural gas is still competitive in a number of markets. And in order to beat out natural gas, we need a combination of both wind and solar and battery storage for rapidly dispatchable energy so that we can start outcompeting natural gas peaker plants and start bending down carbon emissions from the natural gas sector. So you need a multiple front movement to contain and reduce carbon emissions from the standpoint of energy use. Now, of course, efficiency does also play a part. If efficiency increases rapidly, then demand for net energy overall goes down, and this reduces demand for fossil fuel-based energy to a greater extent than it does renewable-based energy, because renewable energy is really starting to outcompete fossil fuel-based energy in a number of sectors. But then on top of all that, you need also a strong policy push that provides incentives and really works to get that renewable energy deployed as rapidly as possible and works to shut down the old coal and natural gas plants and curtail the natural gas plants and curtail oil drilling also as rapidly as possible so that we can start bending down that carbon emissions curve from the energy sector. And it's worth noting that fossil fuels in and of themselves represent about 80% of the global carbon emission in total. So that's just a snapshot of the opportunity, both the opportunity and the crisis that we're facing, and it is both an economic crisis and a policy crisis, a crisis in our politics where politicians are not supporting clean energy as much as they should. Primarily in the United States, Republicans are not supporting clean energy as much as they could, even as so many of them go on to even deny the impacts of human-caused climate change, even as they become worse and worse for every one of us living here, not just in the United States, but around the world. All right, so I just wanted to provide you with a snapshot of the present trend and our opportunities toward confronting that. Now I'd just like to talk about Tesla. And it looks like Tesla is really starting to beat out the competition in its sector, namely Mercedes, Jaguar, Audi, Porsche, in the higher priced, middle range luxury segment. And it's starting to enter a segment that is also typically dominated by economic compact vehicles like the Honda Accord or the Toyota Camry, as it scales production of the Model 3, now averaging around 4,500 Model 3s produced per week, which is very substantial and enough to put the Model 3 as one of the top selling cars in the US. Now, it also looks that, according to headlines, investors are feeling a bit optimistic about Tesla's earnings and its overall position in the market. It's worth noting that a Tesla short has flipped from Tesla short to Tesla long as a result of the fact that Tesla is just basically beating out the competition. Andrew Left of Cetron Research has had a change of heart, writing about the Model 3, stating that by the time this product, writing about the Model 3, stating that basically the Model 3 is eating the competition, and that the rest of the main competition in the form of fossil fuel-based vehicles, but also the major automakers themselves are getting left further and further behind. So Tesla is really not just a market leader, but it's kind of breaking ahead, and this due to its 100% emphasis on electric vehicles and clean energy. It keeps refining and improving its business model, and it keeps producing better and better products. So we've got about a minute and a half now. And I'd just like to also note some highlights that are coming ahead of the Tesla earnings report. One, that a number of investors are optimistic that Tesla will show a profit or nearly a profit in the third quarter as it surged production of the Model 3. But in addition, Tesla is also working to rapidly build a gigafactory in China, which is expected to produce both the Model 3 and the upcoming Model Y for the Chinese market, which is one of the largest electric vehicle markets in the world. Now, overall, it is worth noting that Tesla by itself can't solve the climate crisis, but what it can do is provide an example of what industry needs to do in order to deal with climate change. Not just transition to clean energy, but prioritize clean energy and focus on clean energy as a sole source, and use a 100% renewable energy-based business model. This as politicians respond to climate change rather than denying it. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.